Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Films and Stuff. I am Ethan, and I'm here with Pete. What's up, Pete?
We're back after a 1-week hiatus.
We are back after a 1-week hiatus, and we are armed with having watched the season finale of Ahsoka, the long-awaited Ahsoka, I might add. Let's take it from the top. What rating would you have given the series?
So I started off relatively on the fence. I'm always excited when I see a Star Wars program, good or bad. However, I've also been relatively, let's say, conservative with my emotions when it comes to Star Wars, when it comes to Disney in general, because I think the MCU has been a relatively big letdown. Painful for me to say it, but it's got to be said. I've been careful. The first half of the season, I was still at a mooch.
Yeah.
And then really it was episodes 5 and onwards where I was just like, all right, this show has found its grooves. It's a must subscribe. But this is one of the most heavily caveated must subscribes I've given over 200 plus episodes.
Look, I agree with you. As a mega Star Wars fan, definitely this is a must subscribe to me. But I hear what you're saying, and I feel like there's a category which is don't really like the characters, don't really buy some of the decision making, still love the show and the story. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. Shall we talk about the series first before we get on to what some of our problems may or may not have been?
Yeah, let's do that.
Ahsoka may not be a direct sequel, but it's a spiritual successor to Clone Wars, the animated TV series, and more importantly, the Rebels TV series, spearheaded by Dave Filoni.
Right.
This is the first time we're really seeing everyone from the animated show in the live action. Now, of course, we've seen Ahsoka, who had a cameo in The Mandalorian.
Yep.
But really, it's the first time we're seeing the Ghost Crew. So, we're seeing Ezra Bridger, Sabine Wren, Hera Syndulla. Thrawn is returning.
Anakin makes an appearance.
A couple appearances, right?
Yep.
And then, of course, the Night Sisters play a big role in this.
Can I put this in perspective, though? I understand that this is taking place before The Force Awakens.
So this is like 15 years before Force Awakens, and this is like maybe 5 years after the Empire has fallen, and maybe 15 years before the First Order rises.
Got it. You're right. That makes sense. So when you put that in perspective, there should be a lot of importance attached to this, and especially attached to the emergence of Thrawn. The stakes should be really, really high. Then I think it's a little bit where a disappointment comes in, right?
Yeah, the prime disappointment comes from the fact that it's really important and the stakes are super high because Thrawn is an existential threat. Now, the average viewer isn't going to understand that unless they've watched Rebels. He was a master strategist. He was shown as someone to be feared in Rebels. If you haven't watched Rebels, he's just another bad guy wearing the Empire uniform. Everyone is told that he's supposed to be this man to be feared, but you don't really know why. You don't really understand why. And frankly speaking, even though we get to see a bit of him in 2 or 3 episodes, we don't really see that in those 2 or 3 episodes. We see hints of that, but we don't really see why he's a man to be feared. It certainly makes sense that they need one figure who can kind of create the new empire, right? The new First Order.
Yeah.
We've all seen episode 7. We all understand that the First Order is a thing and that they're building another Death Star.
I mean, when I put this in perspective, and I look at all the other historical Star Wars lore, the Rebels and the Jedis are almost always significant underdogs, right?
Yeah.
When you look at kind of like the roster of cast here, Like how you used to do it when you play like, like some sports games, like basketball, you say, well, this team's got 3 really good guys, and this one's got 2 really good guys. So the team with the better talent should win. If you just look at the folks in this series, you've got Morgan and the Night Sisters, right? Which seemed very formidable. You've got Balon, who's an incredible new addition. He's very formidable. You've got Shin, the apprentice of Balon, also seems very formidable, right? On the rebel side, you've got Ahsoka, of course, who is the strongest, but doesn't necessarily appear to be stronger than Balon. And then you've got Sabine, who's all over the place. And sometimes she's very good, and sometimes she's considered very bad. That's it. We can take Hera out of it. There's really only those 2, Ezra, again, late edition, against a relatively deep talent bench for the Empire, for the new First Order, right? When I look at it this way, I guess I'm always a little bit frustrated that it seems that the Empire in this case is always a little bit on their back foot and seems to be making a large number of mistakes, right? They're trying to find Thrawn. So I guess it goes back to my point that I love Star Wars. I love the story, but I'm not really feeling like what are the stakes here and how this is playing out for what should be like a very, very critical period after episode 6.
So you raised a good point. I think this is why I was probably on the fence for the first half of the season.
Yeah.
Episodes 1 through 4 were really about them chasing the MacGuffin, this map to find out where Ezra and Thrawn are.
Yeah.
And it didn't really pick up the pace until episodes 5 through 8, where we're kind of like, yeah, this is great. We're getting to see a new side of the Star Wars universe. We're getting to see some new characters. We're getting to see some pretty good battle sequences. And more importantly, we're also getting to see some introspection into Ahsoka and what makes her tick. Even though that episode was relatively slow, man, I loved it.
How would you summarize what makes Ahsoka tick?
A drive that she had to just, whatever it is, succeed or to move forward. But I think she was also held back by this burden of Anakin Skywalker turning into Darth Vader in the back of her mind. Like she was kind of scarred and traumatized that her Jedi master basically was the guy that was like the most evil and most powerful dark force user out there. And it's something that she didn't see coming. And I think she felt a burden of responsibility as if it was her duty to stop him and that she wasn't able to.
Did you like the flashbacks to Anakin?
I loved it. I really thought it was so good. I thought it was so good because I don't know how to say it, but at the end of episode where he was like, do you want to live or do you want to die? And she's like, no, I want to live. And she's like, well, you got to fight for it. You have to let go of that weight that was holding you back. And then, she starts wearing the white clothes or, the very light gray clothes. And you're just like, yeah man, it seems so badass. It's almost like a moment of true enlightenment for her.
That was a very perilous idea to bring back Hayden Christensen, right? We're basically bringing him back, and there's an element of de-aging and how we remember him kind of in episode 3 it was. And also, Hayden Christensen had like really mixed reviews in terms of his portrayal of Anakin Skywalker. It wasn't so much him as the actor getting the bad reviews, but more of how maybe that story went and the evolution of Anakin to Darth Vader, was really picked apart by like a lot of, Star Wars fans, including ourselves, right?
I think that the prequel trilogy received a lot more hate than it deserved. I also think that George Lucas has never been a good writer.
No.
A lot of the actors got a lot of the blame for things that were, frankly speaking, not necessarily in their control.
If we're being totally honest, though, Dave Filoni, who is an incredible visionary, is also not wonderful at creating dialogue. There's supposed to be a very deep bond, complicated, between Ahsoka and Sabine. I feel nothing there. Like that's not coming across for me at all.
Yeah, it's hit or miss because I agree with
Yeah.
you that I'm not necessarily feeling it between the two of them. Having
Yeah.
said that, I think Baylan Skoll is one of the best written guys in the
Incredible.
entire Star Wars anthology.
Yeah.
There's real pathos. There's real question as to why we're doing this, and give credit where it's due. A lot of that comes down to Ray Stevenson.
Oh yeah, he's fantastic.
But my God, in terms of the performance, in terms of the writing, like, he is a bad guy. Is he a good guy? It's questionable, and it's really good. Like, it reminds me a little bit of Killmonger from the first Black Panther movie, which is, he's a bad guy, but the things he's saying, not entirely wrong.
Or he's a good guy who's using bad actions
for the quote-unquote greater good.
Yeah.
But that's the point. The point is that that's the kind of nuanced villain that you just love to see on screen. Between the two of them, of course, Ahsoka is the good guy and Baylan's the bad guy. It becomes a little bit more interesting because you have to ask yourself, is he the bad guy? I'm not 100% sure. And we still don't know what his motives are.
I guess one confusion that the last episode I thought made worse was if you look at let's say the axis of evil of Baylan, Morgan, and Thrawn, Morgan's role became cloudier than ever.
Oh, yeah. She wasn't doing it for the Empire at all.
Yeah.
She was doing it for her sisters and for Dathomir, which when she says under her breath for Dathomir, I became a convert for her, because then all of a sudden you realize, hey, wait a minute, she's not doing this because she's some mustache twirling bad guy that, everyone thinks, oh, well, I want to be bad for the sake of being bad. She's a
patriot.
And she believes in the cause. It's just that the cause isn't the First Order. It's her people.
Yeah.
And that, even though, again, she's a bad guy, there's a certain nobility to that.
I agree. And really importantly, it also helps justify actions, right?
Yeah.
And I feel that every character needs to have a justification for their action. Thrawn desires power and control and a clear vision to take over the universe. Baylan, it's not as clear. Morgan, at least, it became more clear.
Look, before we get too deep into that, we're getting into it, but so the first 4 episodes, chase for the MacGuffin so that we could find out where Thrawn is and bring him back. And it really was a race where the bad guys are trying to go somewhere and the good guys are trying to stop them at all costs. That fails. They get to where they're going. And the second half is a chase to stop them from coming back. That also fails. But it was a partial success in the sense that they were able to bring Ezra back. And more importantly, now maybe there's also going to be belief in the new alliance that Thrawn is back and that there is an existential threat.
Well, the council will definitely...
We'll see how that plays out, because, the one other thing that the show has been very good about is how bureaucracies you end up shooting yourself in the foot, right? Because they're leading by council. They're not leading by like a dictator or an empire. They bicker over things that they shouldn't be wasting their time on. They're not believing the people they should be believing. And by the time they realize something's going to happen, it's probably going to be too late. And spoiler alert, it is too late, right? Because we know what happens in episodes 7, 8, and 9.
Not much the council could have done differently, though.
You're right for the sake of the show. But for example, if they had supported Hera, they would have allowed her to send a fleet to stop the ship from getting into hyperspace so that they could find Thrawn, right? Instead, she had to go with 1 ship, 2 TIE fighters, and a ragtag group of guys who were ready to disobey orders.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's that kind of hubris. The Empire's been defeated. They're not going to come back. It's a theme we see constantly. And it's actually something that Thrawn mentions. He's like, look, when they said, oh, there's just two of them, how can they defeat a whole battalion? That kind of hubris that I've seen and heard personally, time and time again, that have destroyed many battalion in the past.
I mean, that said, Thrawn, I felt, was a little bit of a disappointment. He should be a strategic or like intellectual genius, right? He should be outmaneuvering people all the time. And I felt like his reputation kind of indicated that he had that ability.
Yeah.
And that he was very cutthroat and wasn't afraid to sacrifice his own team for the greater good. But honestly, he just seemed to make like a lot of little strategic gaffes. Ahsoka, how many times did her and Hu Yang have their ship kind of stranded and it was never taken out? That's the nature of the show. You can't have Ahsoka destroyed, but I felt like from a writing perspective or a creative perspective, they could have come up with a little bit more distance so that you'd still see the intelligence and the capability of Thrawn.
So I think the show was relatively good at showing how cutthroat he is and how willing he was to sacrifice pawns or even, larger chess pieces on the board to get what he saw was his victory. And at least in the terms of this show, his victory was getting back to the galaxy that he knows.
Yeah.
What the larger picture is, we don't know in terms of the show. We have an idea in terms of the overall story, but not in terms of this show. Let's go back to the fact that I think this is a must subscribe. But your average Star Wars fan, and I do mean average, I don't mean hyper fan, is not going to think that this is a must subscribe. I think that
I agree.
This is probably going to be a mooch at best. I could even see this being a skip for all others, because if you look at the story on its own, if you just look at Ahsoka season 1 as a story on its own, it does not stand on its own. You need to have seen Clone Wars. You need to have seen Rebels to get an understanding. And at best, this seems like a part of Act 2 in the story of the rise of the First Order. We don't know where the show is going next. We don't know if there's going to be a season 2, and I'll get to that as well. A lot of this is coming totally out of left field. And this show in particular has felt the most MCU out of all of the Star Wars properties. You could start with The Mandalorian season 1, not having seen any of Star Wars, and you could still watch that show.
Yeah.
You could understand what's going on in the sense that you don't need to do any homework. You need to do so much homework for this show. I've done it. I think you're 50-50, maybe slightly more than 50-50 on doing it. Your brother is not going to do that homework. My sister isn't even in the same class.
Yeah. I think the way you've just broke it down is precisely the way that this should be evaluated. Take away whether or not the show is good or entertaining, but just in terms of the framework, you picked it up right away because you saw Clone Wars, you saw Rebels, you saw Bad Batch. You know where this came from and kind of where it fits in and where it's going.
Right.
You're already sitting at the front of the class, like you said. I know generally, even though I haven't seen Clone Wars or Rebels, I do know kind of where this fits in, and I'm able to kind of pick up the context and enjoy it for that context. Again, irrespective of the characters and the storyline. My brother would not. You're absolutely right. He could name all the characters from Star Wars 4, 5, 6, generally able to explain, the difference between Rebels and Empire, Jedis, Mandalorians, but he would not see what are the stakes of the show? What is the purpose of the show? Why is Thrawn a big deal? What is, the relationship between all those folks? He would not. And I agree with you. Without that context, the show, unlike Mandalorian, does not really stand on its own in terms of entertainment value or compelling characters. And I don't think the problem is Rosario Dawson.
No.
I think the problem is mostly Sabine and a little bit about how they've incorporated Morgan and how they've incorporated Ezra. I would say all the other characters, Hu Yang is fine, Baylan is amazing, Shin plays her role, Hera plays her role. I think the real problems are Sabine's character is not fitting into this at all, and the Ezra character is out of context, and Morgan is kind of all over the place.
This is the problem that I think Disney had. I think they saw the success of Kevin Feige's MCU vision.
Yeah.
And they said, let's apply this formula to everything because we've got this huge library of intellectual property. And what they haven't realized is you can do that for 4 to 10 movies. You can do that maybe for one season of television. You cannot do it for a new property that's predicated on 7 seasons plus 4 seasons of 2 different shows. No one has the time or the patience except for a very dedicated fan base. And that's not enough people. You can do that for a movie because the financial stakes, the impact is much higher. You're spending $150 to $250 million, but you could theoretically making $1 billion. But you can't spend $200 million on 8 episodes of TV and get $1 billion in revenue or $1 billion worth of subscribers. That's not going to happen.
Do you think the problem is that the series is called Ahsoka versus Rise of the First Order? If it was called something like Star Wars, Rise of the First Order, or Ahsoka, a Jedi story, if it was given a different title and a little bit of a different angle, would you see it differently?
So the show fundamentally wouldn't change, but I think the context would change dramatically.
Yes.
And I think that what you would do is you would increase the pool of people who are interested in seeing the show from, let's say, maybe 20% of the Star Wars fans to like 70 or 80%. If you were to say Ahsoka, the Rise of the First Order.
Yeah. I also think, honestly, if they would have taken 2 episodes and not had anyone except Ahsoka and Hu Yang, show Ahsoka doing some missions. Maybe she's talking to Mon Mothma. Maybe she's with Hera. She's with Hu Yang. Let us really, really get introduced a little bit more to this adult, someone who sleeps in her ship. Let's get to know Ahsoka better. And then we can bring in Sabine. Sabine's a little bit mysterious. These two have a strained relationship. Why? Well, Ahsoka used to train her. And then now there's a dispute in terms of, did Ahsoka drop her? Did Sabine drop out? Now these two are teaming up. Sabine reached out to Ahsoka. There's been this incident. Baylan and Shin and Morgan. And then towards the end, then you introduce the idea that all of this is because Admiral Thrawn is alive. And this is what Baylan and Shin and Morgan are all working towards, is bringing him back. And then Sabine identifies, also Ezra. And suddenly you set up season 2 and the stakes are bigger, but at least you really, really get to see the power of Ahsoka. You get to really admire her and like her as a character. And I don't think we had the chance to really do that because of all the other stories that were going on.
I kind of agree with that because I like the idea of a pseudo-Mandalorian-esque introduction to a character. We knew nothing about the Mandalorian, and the first few episodes were all about him going on bounties.
Yes.
And we only got to see him be a badass. I think one of the biggest problems I had as a Star Wars fan, by the way, is how do you convince people to watch this show when they know Star Wars, but then all of a sudden there's magic, there's now necromancy. This is not Dungeons and Dragons. I get it. There's a lot of mythology with the Dathomir, with the Night Sisters that we haven't seen on screen before. But it comes so far of left field. And again, I know about the Night Sisters. I know about Dathomir. I've played Jedi Outcast. I've played Jedi Survivor. I know these things. Your average viewer hasn't. all of a sudden, oh, well, how is this person using a lightsaber and now they've got magic?
When you point that out, though, there's a theme, though, also in the show, and it continues with Sabine. You talk about magic crossing over with Jedi forces. Sabine is a Mandalorian with no force powers. We learn from Huyang that she's a terrible Jedi trainee. And then at the end, suddenly, she becomes actually quite powerful.
So that's actually, you've raised the next point. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of that, especially because I saw Rebels, where she was not a Force user.
No.
And there was no indication that she was a Force user.
No,
so
none.
Maybe if they had introduced in Rebels that Ahsoka saw something in her that she was a Force user, and maybe there was and I missed it, but I don't recall that. It just comes out of left field. Now, if you've never seen Rebels, I think a lot of people are just going to take it that, oh, maybe she was just had access to the Force and she was just bad with it.
The value of the Jedi is supposed to be very, very rare. In my view, they're supposed to have some type of pre-natural gift for the Force. It's like an ability that they have from their youth immediately. It's not something that is a talent or a skill that's kind of like suddenly discovered, after puberty or when they're a young adult. Anakin had something from a very, very young age. Luke is a little bit different. He did not, but he was not raised in a environment where he even knew what the Force was.
Exactly.
Or what a Jedi was. He was so sheltered. So I think that's again my issue with Sabine. And it's absolutely fine to be a Mandalorian. We've been taught that Mandalorians by themselves are very, very admirable. She can be a very fierce fighter. She can be extremely aggressive and fearless, being just a Mandalorian. But you don't have to suddenly also say, well, she also is Force positive. And, Ahsoka is helping her unlock this. That Sabine character really, really bothers me, even though I really like her as an actress. The character I just felt doesn't really fit in to the story at all. It's all over the place.
And again, I think a lot of that also has to do with the fact that she's sloppy as not just a Mandalorian, but also as a Force user.
I think we're also turned off by how she got to Ezra. And it seems like they never really had that talk. That's a big deal. I mean, Sabine basically left Ahsoka. She turned to Baylan when she had every opportunity to either help Ahsoka or to destroy the map. She basically betrayed her, went with Baylan, never really explained that to Ezra. Ezra never really had any intellectual curiosity in terms of how she got here, what her deal is. And then she and Ahsoka just kind of got back together, and now they're inseparable again. It would have been better if Sabine would have joined Baylan and Shin would have joined Ahsoka. That is a much better storyline.
I totally agree. I think it would have made that arc a lot more interesting.
Actually, you would have made two characters more interesting because Shin is really marginalized.
Yeah, at least in this season. So, I mean, we don't know where she's going to go next season. And again, great segue, because I felt incredibly shortchanged by both Shin and Baylan.
Yeah, so did I. They did nothing in the last episode.
Nothing in the last episode. And look, I get it. Unfortunately, Ray Stevenson passed early. We don't know what they're going to do in season 2. And, we still don't know if there is a season 2 at this point. We know that Shin, Ahsoka, and Sabine are stranded in another galaxy. They're not back with everyone else. Ezra and Thrawn are back with everyone else. How do they get back? Do they get back? Why? When? No idea what's going to happen there. What is Baylan doing on that planet? He clearly has some motivation, but unfortunately, they didn't tell us anything as to what that motivation was. I thought that they would drop some kind of crazy reveal at the end of the 8th episode. None of that came through. We saw him standing on some big statue. That's fine, but come on.
Yeah.
It felt underbaked.
I really would have preferred that we went through a more Mandalorian style season where we really get to love Ahsoka and see what a loner she is, yet how powerful she is. And the big reveal in the last couple, like 2 episodes, is that Thrawn is out there. And that's what Baylan, Shin, Morgan are all plotting towards, right? And Sabine maybe was never on board with this plan until she found out that Ezra was with Thrawn as well. And then she suddenly, selfishly decided to align more with Ahsoka.
Or, that the first half of the season, we see the 2 stories are separate in the sense that every time we see Ahsoka, she's working on eliminating the threat of Thrawn.
Yeah.
And simultaneously, we see that Sabine is working on bringing Ezra back. And then episodes 5 through 8, they realize that, my God, we can work together, even though we have problems with each other. We have to work together because we can knock 2 birds with one stone.
We really love Filoni, but does he have too much on his plate? Did he give Ahsoka basically the short end of the stick by the fact that he doesn't have more writers around him, that he doesn't have more support around him, that he kind of insists on doing this alone and individually rather than opening it up a little bit and getting more perspectives on where this should go?
I don't know, because what I read was that in 2026, there are supposed to be 2 new Star Wars movies coming out, one in May, one in December.
No.
One of those is supposed to be a Daisy Ridley-led sequel to episode 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
I think we've all heard that. She was meant to be coming back for some new Star Wars project where she reprises her role as Rey Skywalker. That's the first. I heard the second movie is supposed to be, get this, a movie starring Ahsoka, Mandalorian, and Boba Fett. And all these TV shows are supposed to be leading up to a theatrical release, Marvel style.
I don't like it.
I am not a fan if that's the case.
I don't like it at all. But mostly I don't like it because I don't like Boba Fett. I would maybe be okay if it was Ahsoka and Mandalorian. I really did not enjoy Boba Fett at all. And I don't think that should be theatrical. Boba Fett was a marginalized but beloved character that we saw in Empire Strikes Back, and we saw him in Return of the Jedi, and of course we saw Jango Fett earlier, and I can't remember if it was episode 1 or 2. But to bring him back, I mean, one of my issues with Boba Fett, which did take place after Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
In Return of the Jedi, he's super skinny.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, you're right. In terms of his look, you can tell he's gotten a little bigger. He's a little older now. So yes, obviously.
And that's okay in real life. But in terms of Boba Fett, I don't want to see him cinematically. That series was not great either. It was only rescued by Mandalorian. There was nothing particularly compelling about him. There was nothing particularly compelling about that season. It was only until the Mandalorian and Skywalker and Grogu showed up that things got like a little bit more interesting, right?
Look, anyway, that's the rumor I've read. I don't know if that's true. If you told me that Disney Plus was going to release a 2-hour standalone movie starring Bo-Katan, The Mandalorian, Ahsoka, maybe Boba Fett, Grogu, and all the guys that we've seen on these standalone TV series, I would be totally fine with that. What I don't want them to do is to go from these 10-episode TV shows, 8-episode TV shows, 6-episode TV shows to a 2.5-hour feature-length movie that they're going to spend $250 million on. I just don't see it happening. And I don't know why. I don't see what the purpose of that would be.
I'm on board with a new Daisy Ridley movie because I think we like her as a character. And I think we understand that the Star Wars universe needs to go on, but it needs a little bit of a fresh start where it leaves some of the other characters behind. And I think it needs to be a little bit judicious in terms of who it takes forward. But I will definitely see it if it comes out, but I'm not really like dying to see something where you just basically have a big collaboration between all the TV
I mean, it
characters.
feels like it's going to be an Avengers movie in that regard.
Yeah.
Again, in principle, I don't have a problem with that. Do I need to see that in the cinema? I don't think so.
I don't. Some of the attraction of what Disney has done is that it's a little bit low stakes. The Mandalorian, I thought, was a great show to have after the much maligned episodes 7, 8, 9. Those were so polarizing for
Divisive.
Star Wars fans that we needed to take a step back and we needed to say, here's the universe, the look and feel that you're accustomed to. Let's just take a deep breath. Let's take a step back. Let's de-escalate. We're going to give you what you want, but the stakes are lower. Nothing bad can happen. We're not going to screw with any of your beloved characters, but we're still going to give you the same look and feel that you want out of a Star Wars. So I thought Mandalorian from that perspective was really, really brilliant. And I think if they stick with that, Ahsoka's another great example. Brilliant. I think it wasn't pulled off as well. I don't think they built her up enough and gave her enough individual time before they dropped her in the middle of a very convoluted scheme.
Yeah, I agree. You know, we've harped on about a lot of what didn't work or why it was so negative, but there's a lot to love in this show. I thought the fight sequences were fantastic. I thought the saber battles were really good. It really felt like a Star Wars property.
Production value was very high.
And we got to see some newer facets, including the space whales, you know, the Purrgil. We got to see some new facets of the universe that we haven't seen before. I liked that we saw the Night Sisters. I liked that we're probably going to see Dathomir and more of that story in season 2. Again, I'm assuming there will be a season 2. It can't end here.
It cannot.
You can't end with one of the most powerful Jedis in the galaxy stranded in another galaxy.
Definitely there has to be a season 2, and I'm looking forward to it, but I think it's going to take a bit of time to come out given all the other things that are on now the Disney calendar.
I don't think it's going to be before 25.
Writer's strike, actors strike. I would imagine just the general disarray that Disney is in right now, considering how much Favreau and Filoni have on their plates. I think you're right. I would not expect to see this within the next 12 months.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fall 25.
That's 2 years. 2 years is a super long time, by the way.
On the plus side, it gives them time to figure out, you know, what they're doing with Ray Stevenson's character and how they're going to replace him and who they're going to replace him with. Yeah, it is frustrating. But
well, that is season 1, 8 episodes of Ahsoka in the can. We're looking
where did you land on this in your reading?
I'm giving this a must subscribe. As you and I said at the beginning, I think as mega Star Wars fans, any property they put out is almost de facto going to be a must subscribe. If I'm talking to my brother and he's like, hey, I can only watch one thing this weekend, I would not tell him watch Ahsoka. It's must subscribe for me, for anyone who's really a Star Wars fan. If you're not really familiar with some of the adjacent historical events, it's probably a mooch.
Yeah, I think you're being generous with the mooch. I think, again, if you look at Ahsoka on its own as a standalone TV show, it doesn't stand alone. Like, it can't. I think that would make it a skip.
I don't think it's a skip.
I agree. I don't think so either. But I think that for your average person, not Star Wars fan, if they looked at this and they'd be like, who the hell is Sabine? Who the hell is Ahsoka? Who are these people? I know Darth Vader.
No.
That's it.
You could say this. If you would skip Ahsoka, your life would not in any way socially be negatively impacted. You will never go to a dinner party and feel left out because unless it's a Star Wars dinner party.
Unless it's a dinner party
unless
with
it's you
Ethan
and I.
and
Unless
Pete.
it's you will not feel left out of the conversation because you haven't seen Ahsoka. I have to say, Mandalorian, I don't know if I'd go so far as to say you may be left out of a conversation, but very well could be at a dinner table and more than one person talks a little bit about Mandalorian. there's some value in being able to kind of like follow along or contribute to that conversation. I think there's almost zero likelihood, again, unless it's a dinner party hosted by you and I, in which case it's a pizza party, it seems unlikely you're going to be in a situation where there's going to be a discussion of Ahsoka.
Agreed. So that's Ahsoka. It's a heavily caveated must subscribe from the both of us. But having said that, we're interested in hearing what you have to say. Have you seen Clone Wars? Have you seen Rebels? Have you not seen any of them and you still saw Ahsoka? What are your thoughts? Let us know.
Yes.
Tweet at us at F&S Podcast. You can DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast. You can email us aloha at filmsandstuffpodcast.com. Or the best thing you can do is like this video and leave a comment below, and subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so that when the next episode of the Films and Stuff Podcast drops, you'll be the first to know.
Pete, thank you for your time and encyclopedic knowledge of the show and the characters. We appreciate it. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. And please heed Pete's words. Ring the bell, like the show, send us some comments.
Thanks, Ethan. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in the next episode of the Films and Stuff Podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.